Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to take you through our CSR journey. Let's see, hopefully also I can drive the presentation and change the slides. If not, could you please change to the next slide? Arthur, are you able to help me change slides? Because apparently I cannot. Thank you. All right, so let's start. And let's start by thinking a little bit about corporate social responsibility and what it is all about. The whole idea is that by practicing corporate social responsibility, or CSR, we become more aware of what kind of impact our business has at Viking Malt on all aspects of society. So not just environmental, but also economic and social. And when we engage in CSR, what we want to do then is make sure that we benefit society and the environment instead of, for example, contributing negatively. And CSR is also a very good way of building stronger bond between Viking Malt and our employees, as well as our customers and suppliers. And it gives a good reason also to discuss more difficult questions, ethical questions, and boost morale, and all in all, make us feel more connected with the world around us. Then if we go to the next slide, when we make a CSR agenda, normally you start with presenting the core. So what is it? How do we, as Viking Malt, add value? What do we do? And here's our value creation model. So we take source barley locally, and there down in the grain, you can see what we do with it. That's really the essence of what we do. So we create malt with functionality, flavor, color, texture, enzymes, and can even be minerals and vitamins, depending on, of course, what application you're looking at. And then we supply this globally to our customers in brewing, distilling, and food. So that's the essence. We add value by adding all these properties to the barley. And above the blocks, you can see climate change, health and wellness, market consolidation, digitalization. That is kind of the mega trends of the world we are operating in. So they will affect all of our businesses somehow, whether we like it or not. And then if we go to the next slide, our CSR agenda covers the most relevant topics for our business, where we have most impact on the society around us and on environment. And a good way of starting is to look at the United Nations sustainability goals, because there you can actually find all these different ways of connecting your CSR agenda to the bigger picture. And at Viking Malt, we've chosen to focus on personnel and human rights, business ethics, product safety, energy, water and material efficiency in production, and sustainable procurement. And I will now in this presentation go through these and tell you a little bit more in detail what we are actually doing and where we are heading in these different topics. So if you please switch to the next slide. Starting with personnel and human rights, it is very important for us, of course, to protect our people, our property information, our knowledge, and the environment from accidents, incidents, and crimes. And going to the next slide. Can you move to the next? Thank you. Here's some examples. And if we start with the graph on the left-hand side, that's a picture showing how we are doing when it comes to gender equality. So the red ones are women, the gray ones are men. And you can see that at the moment, we about 38% of all our employees are women. If we look at managers, about 57% are women. And today in the management team, 29% are women. And this is related to our target to offering our employees equal opportunities regardless of gender, ethnic origin, age, and so on. If we would look at the same picture, for example, in our CSR report from last year, actually the management team would have 50% women. And here maybe it's important to point out that we are, of course, the point is that gender shouldn't affect our choices. So of course, in the end, when you look at the bigger group, we should end up with about 50-50. But in a small team like the management team, that's more difficult to have all the time 50-50. So we were there. Right now, we are at 29% women. We have also introduced a whistleblowing channel to enable anonymous reporting of misconduct in our company. So that's one way of then following up that we are doing what we say we should be doing. And we also train our personnel in order to develop a strong network of or a strong working culture for safety, work safety. And that is a journey we have started already some years ago, and a very important one. So we have introduced safety as a topic, for example, in our daily meetings. For example, in the lab in Lahti, every daily morning meeting covers also safety. So there's always the question that, are there any safety issues? Has anyone seen anything that could be a safety risk? And that's, of course, a very important base for developing a high standard safety culture. And then in order to also measure that we are doing okay, we carry out both employee attitude surveys and customer satisfaction surveys so that we get feedback and understand where to improve. Then if we move on from personnel and human rights to business ethics, on the next slide, starting with our values. So we have 4 values. They are: we respect, meaning that we treat our employees, our partners in business with respect. We care. We also care, for example, the well-being, safety of our employees. We are curious. It means that we are looking for solutions, how we can improve our operations, new innovative ways of serving our customers, new products. And we strive for success, which can mean, of course, both kind of business profits. Of course, we need to be profitable to remain a business. But also it can mean that we strive for a certain excellence in things that we do. We want to do things well. And our values are kind of a backbone of our business. And in order for them to become a living part of our culture, it's important that they are discussed. So we have actually had workshops with all employees where we have discussed these values and what they can mean in everyday situations and everyday life. And when the values are a living part of a culture, they actually help you in decision making, because there are a lot of situations that are not black and white. So it's not clearly always visible what is the right thing to do. And then actually the values are really good helps in helping you in decision making. And if you go to the next slide, I already discussed the values here, but then we also have an employee code of conduct, which covers the way we want to work in Viking Malt. And it covers matters of human rights, anti-corruption, bribery matters. And the idea is to help employees to identify situations where there's, for example, a risk for corruption or bribery. And we have trained all our employees in the code of conduct using an e-learning platform. So there are also good examples of everyday situations where you need to think of what is the right thing to do. So that is business ethics. And moving on to product safety. That may seem like a kind of self-evident thing. Of course, product safety is a must, quality is a must. And what we are doing to further improve our product safety, if you go to the next slide, please. We have decided to upgrade from the basic ISO 22000 food safety certification, which is already in place in all sites. We've decided to upgrade towards FSSC 22000 certification. And that is a slightly more demanding food safety standard. It is GFSI approved, so it is also, for example, requiring a more in-depth evaluation of, for example, food fraud and food defense issues. So we are already FSSC certified in our plant in Stregom, and next in line is Panevežys, which is actually going to be audited still during this autumn. And then next in line is Scherps and Vordingborg and Halmstad for next year, followed by Lahti. So that is what we are doing right now and in the coming years to improve our food safety. And then if we go towards supply chain and the kind of more, then we come closer to the what is often perceived as typical sustainability questions, so environment. And here's a short list of our main activities in sustainable production. And it is all about being as efficient as possible when it comes to using energy, using water, and materials. So we want to generate as little waste as possible, whether it is inefficiency in energy usage or actual waste. And we are also, in addition to continuously improving our energy efficiency, we are also switching to cleaner fuels. From 2021, we aim to no longer use coal as a fuel in any site for heat production. So from then on, we will be using wood chips, waste, and natural gas as fuels. And we are also scanning, of course, new technology, for example, solar heat solutions. So, and this is a quickly developing area, really, and the ways of, or shall we say, what is considered sustainable, that is also something which is a little bit changing all the time, and the ways of calculating are changing. So it's not as simple as it sounds to have a clear agenda how to move forward here. Just as an example, wood chips are really a good choice if you are situated in a country with a lot of wood byproducts, like in Finland, where you get a lot of waste from the pulp and paper industry. Whereas if you need to get your wood chips shipped maybe from South America, it doesn't, of course, make any sense. So these are not as simple as they always look. Then on water efficiency, we are actually on a quite good level. We are using 3.2 cubic meters of water per ton of malt. And we have just started a water saving project. So we are benchmarking each other on our own sites and aiming to cut that further. And our material efficiency will actually take a big leap to the right direction when we get rid of the coal, because that is right now actually our main landfill waste. So that one we will take a huge step in very, very soon. Then actually, if you go to the next slide, another interesting thing to think about. So far I've been talking mainly about our own production, what we are doing at Viking Malt when it comes to sustainability. And that one you can see there in the middle, the CO2 emissions of malt production. I think it's about 87, if I remember correctly, our number at the moment, kilogram of CO2 equivalents per ton of malt. But then actually, if you look at the emissions from malt, starting from the cultivation of barley, you can see that barley growing in this rough estimate that is shown here in Denmark, that it is a lot bigger than the actual malt production. And also you can see that it's both malt production and barley growing are bigger than the transports. So the transports are actually relatively small, and even if you ship, you end up with a number which actually isn't huge for delivering the malt. So we are really looking at, in addition to focusing on our malt production and how to make reductions there, we really have to look also at the barley growing. And there it is a question of using fertilizers that are produced in an energy efficient way. And it's also very much about crop yields. So we have to help the farmers. And please don't, make too much notes of these exact numbers, because this is a kind of quick and dirty estimate. So we need to start doing a lot more calculations in this area. But then there's another picture in the next slide, which is actually also showing, and this is a study which is conducted in Finland 2018, and it uses a different methodology. So this one is not looking at CO2 emissions only. The work was done by our partner Luke, which is a Finnish institute working with these matters very much. And also this has been in cooperation with our breweries in Finland through PBL. And this one is looking at also other aspects of sustainability. So also, for example, ozone formation, which is basically smog-like particles in your near environment. Not a big problem for this chain, it looks like. Then it's acidification, which is mainly coming from burning of fossil fuels. Also not a very big issue for this supply chain. And then you see the gray one. That is actually more or less the equivalent of CO2 emissions in the previous slide, so climate change. And eutrophication, that is the leakage of nutrients through farming activities into waters. So that one is obviously relatively big for barley growing. And then there's primary energy consumption. And really what I want, the kind of take-away message or take-home message from this and the previous slide is that if we want to do something for sustainability of our whole supply chain, we need to look beyond our own production and also support the farmers so that they can be part of the solution. And also another point I want to make is that the methodologies are still developing, because I've just shown you 2 slides. Okay, they give roughly the same picture, but there are just so many ways that you can look at sustainability, even if you only choose to look at environmental aspects. Moving on then to the next slide. What can we do about this? How can we help to improve the sustainability of barley growing? I've divided this into 2 parts. So we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions from cultivation. For sure, it can be done. It's not in any way locked to the level where we are now. And that can be done in many ways. The first one, which is actually not even mentioned here in my list, is to introduce barley varieties that are highly yielding, because if you get a good crop yield from your field, you will have less emissions per ton of product. But the other big one is fertilizer application. So we should promote our farmers to use fertilizers that have been produced in kind of low emission production sites. There's quite a big differences actually between different fertilizers. And of course, not to use fertilizer more than needed. So practice precision farming. That's also a very good tool. Then there is an emerging thing called regenerative farming, which is all about studying how actually the cultivation can bind carbon dioxide, not just give emissions through cultivation, but actually also bind CO2. And that is something that isn't actually today included in the emission models. So it's a bit of an opportunity for our value chain. but there's a lot of work needed before we are there. But certainly we are following this very closely because we believe that that is going to help. And then there's biodiversity. Well, why have I mentioned that? It is actually listed as one of the top 5 risks by the Global Risk Report 2020, which is published by and made by the World Economic Forum. So, I mean, if you have been thinking so far that biodiversity is something like, okay, if I want to do something good for the environment, I think now is the time to pay attention, because actually over half, or about more than half, of our world's total GDP is actually either moderately or highly dependent on our nature and its biodiversity. So this is really important for all our well-being and all our businesses, or well, more than half of them anyway. So biodiversity is something we have to take seriously, and we have to make sure we protect it. And what can we do about it? So again, regenerative farming is something that is very much developing right now, and it means, for example, the application of, or the use of, healthy crop rotation. So making sure that you don't just grow barley after wheat, after barley after wheat, and so on, but you also, for example, include legumes in your cropping cycle. Just to mention one way of improving biodiversity. So those are the topics we will focus on at Viking Malt, and how we see that, or where we see we should make a difference. And if you move to the next slide, I'll show you a little bit what we can do, what we are doing, and what we can do. So we have been supporting already for many years the Baltic Sea Action Group, BSAG, and we are going to also actually support their training activities, because they are training farmers in regenerative farming. So that will be an important step. We've also engaged together with the Baltic Sea Action Group in a small pilot study, where we are going to look at where we are right now with regenerative farming in Poland, Lithuania, and Finland. 3 important areas where Viking Malt is operating, and where we have direct farmer contracts. And this nicely links us to a pretty unique project called Carbon Action, which is a Baltic Sea Action Group-led project where scientists, farmers, and companies are working together to enhance the carbon storing actually capacity of soil, basically of agriculture. So this is one of the big global projects where this regenerative farming is studied, and also hopefully this will generate new information for our CO2 calculations as well. And then, of course, we have also we have a supplier code of conduct which covers all aspects of sustainability, and actually all our suppliers have agreed to support that. Then, if you go to the next slide, how do we then measure what we've done in barley growing? Well, we've joined the Sustainable Agricultural Initiative (SAI) platform, and SAI offers a kind of farm sustainability assessment, which is a kind of self-assessment tool, but you can also have a third-party audit made, and we are in that process now, and we expect that we will be audited already this year in Poland and Denmark, and next year in the other 3 countries where we operate, so Finland, Sweden, and Lithuania. So soon we will have also a kind of third-party assessment of our farmer or barley growing activities and sustainability. That is taking us towards the end of the presentations. There's 2 more slides. This one is showing that for sure we are all the time being evaluated by third parties, also outside what we do in farming. We are members of, or we are participating in CDP disclosure, in SEDEX, and in EcoVadis, and actually Baltic Sea Action Group is also evaluating what we do, so we can't make empty promises for them either. And if you go to the last slide, we can proudly present that our efforts have been recognized because we were selected the best performer in food and beverage for small and medium-sized enterprises in EcoVadis this year. So that we are, of course, very proud of. And that is actually the last one. So now comes the very exciting part of whether or not we will manage the questions and answers session without me hearing anyone.
Yes, thank you, Annika. It was a really nice presentation, but actually I don't know if we are going to manage the question of answers. We will try to do that. Anyway, we have 2 questions on chat available. The first one, Annika, do you consider use of farm-saved seeds by contract farmers as sustainable barley growing for your malt regarding variety?
For sure, but of course it has to then be managed with the same quality requirements as a certified seed, which is done by a third party. So I don't think it should be a sustainability issue as long as it is done according to, as long as you do treat your own seed in a proper manner. I don't know if Arthur is reading the questions. Maybe I should read the questions also. Why both standards, ISO 22000 and FSSC? We do not aim to keep both, so we are moving from ISO 22000 towards FSSC. And one good reason to do so is that this is a requirement from some of our customers. So it's not going to be both, it's going to be FSSC in the future. That's our plan. Is there something else? And of course, you are always welcome to come back later and ask questions by email also after the webinar. Is the market demanding more organic malts? It comes and goes. It's I think there is a strong demand for organic malts. And for sure, also, this is something that's supported very strongly by our EU. So I don't think that's anything that's going to go away. There is a demand. Anything else you would like to discuss? I think it's an interesting matter to think about, because organic is one way of farming. And then there's regenerative farming, which kind of is an opportunity for all farmers, whether you are making organic or standard. So I think that is a very interesting opportunity to kind of, for a farmer to do something for sustainability in other ways than going for organic, which is of course also a good way, because it's good for biodiversity, for example. But I think regenerative will be a kind of covering a bigger group of farmers. Will we be growing our organic malt varieties? Do you mean that will we have more products available as organic? Well, that of course is very closely linked to the demand. We will try to have as much available as is requested. It's a complexity issue to some extent, because organic is, of course, it has to be very clearly managed throughout the supply chain. It's kind of, if we have everything available as organic and standard, it will double our number of products, which is quite big already today. good question. If there is a very big demand, of course we will have to do that. It's not a fast project either, by the way, to make organic available, because you have to start from the growing, and even starting to grow organic barley or wheat doesn't happen in 1 year. You have to prepare some years, so it's a slow process. Hopefully you are not losing hope if you are waiting for some favorite products to be available as organic. That is the question is agreed. Organic might not always be the best for environment, so it's a good question. If you get good yields and if you can manage not to over fertilize, it can be really good. But if you don't get good yields, it might not be as good as a well-managed standard production. And do we have any research going on or early results of the biochar use in barley cultivation? Sorry, that is something we are not working on, and I'm not aware that we would be involved in any project where that is covered, unless somehow possibly in this carbon action. But I know that one I would have to check. I don't think we are. All right.
Okay, Annika, thank you very much for your presentation. I think we have answered all the questions, and due to our minor technical difficulties today, we need to ask you, send us an email and we will try to answer all your questions. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this evening today, and see you in the next webinar of Viking Malt. Bye-bye.